One more time for
This shit is...
so we don't get in your way.
the panel.
Holy
In
fuck.
this matter has reached a verdict. We have all parties present here.
Prosecution's present, Your Honor.
Defense is present.
Defense is present.
We have reached a verdict in this matter. Before we begin, however, we would be remiss to not acknowledge the passing of the council treasurer, Terrence Walker.
Every fucking cop is just taking their gun out.
The murder.
And we offer our condolences to his friends, family, and loved one. And we wish you peace and comfort in the days to come. At this time, we're going to go ahead and review the charges. We'll start with the more simple charges that weren't particularly argued. The hot gun charges for Mr. Levy and for Mr. Dumbass. The defendants pled not guilty to these charges. And outside of the questioning of Officer Decker, where he went individual by individual asking if they possessed a weapon, if it was hot, etc., they largely weren't addressed in explicit detail. However, we reviewed the evidence and found that the weapons found on the defendants come back to incidents outlined in reports number 6147, 6052, 6051, and 6050. For reference, that is the people's F, the people's I, the people's J, and the people's G. The evidence indicated in this report indicates that those weapons were used in the incidents that were outlined. Therefore, Mr. Levy and Mr. Dumbass will be guilty of the charges laid forth for them for their hot gun, which would be 4 times criminal use of a firearm and 1 time accomplice to robbery. We reviewed the evidence further and found that all 6 individuals have possessions documented, that they were carrying Class 1 firearms. It's rather simple. All 6 individuals will be found guilty of the charge of 1 count of criminal possession of a firearm Class 1. Now, with regards to the 26 times attempted murder of a government employee, I'm going to break this down so that we can quantify all of them one by one. Evidence exists with blood on file for 14 police officers that were shot during the shootout. Jack Voss, Maeve Wolf, Captain Slacks, Bradford, Vivian Gray, Daft, Coyote, Bayweather, Maxwell, Riker, Decker, Johnson, and On Fire. That accounts for 14 officers that were shot on scene. There's also blood on scene for council member Cletus Cornwood. That makes 15. The video evidence clearly shows the shooting of the other council members, clerks, and civilians. In the video, we can clearly see that the mayor, deputy mayor, chief justice, or sorry, not the deputy mayor, chief of staff, Head of bar was shot at, and the remaining council were shot, minus TJ Walker. Upon doing the math, this adds up to the 26 counts to accomplice of attempted murder of a government employee when you factor in county clerks Leah Strong and Alex Mushkin-Dahman. The defendants being GSR positive, being apprehended on scene, and being in possession of the weapons utilized in the shooting will thus be found guilty of 26 counts of accomplice to attempted murder of a government employee, as well as 3 counts to accomplice to attempted second-degree murder for the shootings of City Gamwich, Kiki Pendragon, and the shooting at Ursula Leichenberg. Further, defendants Kevin, El Rahman, Levy, and Pistone will be found guilty of the charge of prison break. It's fairly straightforward, pertaining to the incident where they were brought out of prison and did not return when they were broken out of that bus. It's fairly simple what happened. They chose to go on the run. They will be found guilty for that at this time. Now, coming down to the hold until trial level charges, kind of the meat of the bones here. I want to start off by addressing the murder of a government employee, and Judge Angel will address the terrorism. We've reviewed the evidence, and it is clear that the gunman that stormed City Hall shot Terrence Walker. Terrence Walker was then incapacitated and injured, and is seen to be left laying on the ground for an extended period of time. He then is brought to the hospital, where a litany of medical care happens, and a defense is brought forward in this instance by the defense. Arguments that
Taco
the act
won.
that led to Mr. Walker's death was not the shooting, but rather was the application of a defibrillator or AED to his brain. This is unconventional, and it was testified to as such by doctors Ryan Wilson and medical liaison Philip Akanch. But medicine is not a perfect science. And with the findings upon reading through the surgery reports from Dr. Ivy Grayson, as well as all medical documentation on file, we three have come to the conclusion. AED or not, Mr. Walker would not have been in the situation where that was even remotely a possibility had he not been shot by the individuals in question. Further reading through the medical reports, it is clear to us that this was a last resort method that was given. It did not inherently kill Mr. Walker, and he was likely to pass, regardless of whether it had been performed or not.
Okay, we expected
Therefore,
this.
The defendants will be found guilty of accomplice to murder of a government employee.
Shit, bro, we got
I will
murder
pass
on
to
our
Judge
fucking
Angel
shit.
now.
Thank you. Now, with regards to terrorism, this charge was one that took the most deliberation and the most consideration in going over the actual, not only the actual wording of the law, but also what it means to commit terrorism. To keep it simple, we applied a simple 3-prong test to go through and determine if the actual wording of the charge was met and whether or not what had occurred would actually apply and be considered terrorism. Now, if you actually are familiar with the charge, you may know that there's 2 sections to it. The first section applies to the civilian population, and the second applies to government entities, which is what we're going to be focusing on. Now, this section explicitly states that the unlawful use of extreme violence and intimidation against government entities that would pursue the disruption, destabilization, or destruction of those entities for political or religious aims would be considered terrorism. In our considerations, we looked over what actually took place at the event itself, as well as statements that were made by the alleged suspects of the crime. And we determined that their actions did lead to the disruption, the destabilization, and the destruction of the government entity. And it ultimately did have a political aim, and it did lead to the destruction.
Bro, this city's cooked, bro. What the fuck is this?
The meeting itself. We believe that that is enough to determine that there was a political aim, and we will be finding them guilty of terrorism as well.
Oh, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Oh man, who
Now,
would have thought?
Now on to the the prosecution have requested 10 years in Bolingbroke Penitentiary and 10 years of parole, as well as set fines for each. I'm gonna go through and and list out what we'll be doing instead. All defendants will receive the same prison sentence. It will be a total of 5 years in Bolingbroke Penitentiary and 5 years on parole upon their release, or government mandated. Mr. Levy and Mr. Pistone will receive credit for 3 units served. They will serve 2 more each. The other defendants will receive 3 additional units in prison. The fines will be as follows. Mr. Levy, you are receiving $217,364 in charges which aren't the HUD, and an additional $150,000 for the whole till trial.
Well,
for a total
everyone
of
goes into debt, so really everyone's getting the nines.
Mr. Dumbass, $211,114 in charges without the hold until
Why
trial.
did we get an extra 3
plus
days? We're only out one
will
day.
come out to $361,114. Mr. K, it'll be a total of $348,489. And then Rami, Vinny, and Taco will all have the flat fines of $345,364. That is the ruling of this court this time, and this hearing is adjourned.
How'd you get that, everybody? Did you hit it to grab? Did you hit it to grab?
Thank you, Your Honor.
I'll go ahead and put it.